Have you ever noticed that you don't actually stop eating when you're full? You stop when you can't eat anymore. That moment when your body feels heavy, your energy drops, and a quiet regret starts to settle in. You tell yourself it will be different next time. You promise control. But when the next meal comes, the same pattern repeats. Not because you are weak, but because you've been taught to ignore the signals that matter most. You were never meant to live in this cycle. Your body was designed with intelligence, with balance, with a natural ability to guide you. But somewhere along the way, that connection faded. You started eating faster than your body could respond. You started listening to cravings instead of cues. And slowly, without even realizing it, you lost the ability to recognize what enough feels like. But what if the problem isn't your discipline? What if the problem is that you've been stopping too late? There is a simple rule, practiced for generations, that can change everything. Not by forcing you to eat less, but by teaching you when to stop. Eat until you are 80% full and then pause. That's it. No extreme diets, no restriction that feels like punishment, just awareness. Just control, because here's the truth most people never realize. Fullness is not a switch, it's a process. Your body takes time to register satisfaction. There is a delay between the moment you've had enough and the moment you feel it. And in that delay, most people keep going, bite after bite, chasing a signal that hasn't arrived yet. And when it finally does arrive, it's too late. That's why you feel heavy. That's why you feel drained. That's why you feel like you've lost control. Not because you lack willpower, but because you've been waiting for the wrong signal. The 80% rule changes that completely. It asks you to stop before the feeling overwhelms you. It teaches you to trust the process instead of chasing the sensation. It gives your body the space it needs to catch up, and something powerful happens when you do this. You begin to feel lighter, not just physically, but mentally. You begin to realize that satisfaction doesn't come from being full. It comes from being in control. From knowing that you can stop, even when there is more in front of you. From proving to yourself that you don't need excess to feel enough. This is where your power starts to return. Because every time you stop at 80%, you are making a statement. You are saying, I choose awareness over impulse. You are saying, I trust my body. You are saying, I am in control. And that feeling, that quiet confidence, it doesn't stay at the table. It follows you into every part of your life. So stay with this. Because what you're about to understand is not just how to eat differently, but how to think differently. How to break a pattern that has been controlling you for years. And how to finally experience what it feels like to live in balance instead of constantly chasing more. And the moment you begin to understand this, something shifts deep inside you. You stop blaming yourself. You stop calling it a lack of discipline. You start seeing the truth. Your brain has been trained to survive, not to slow down. For most of human history, food was uncertain. There was no guarantee of the next meal, so your mind adapted. It learned to take advantage of every opportunity. Eat more when it's available. Store energy. Prepare for scarcity. That instinct is still alive inside you, even though your world has completely changed. Now food is everywhere. It's fast. It's engineered to taste better than anything natural. It's designed to keep you eating, to override your signals, to make stopping feel like loss instead of control. And your brain responds exactly as it was programmed to. It pushes you forward. It tells you to keep going. It convinces you that one more bite won't matter. This is not weakness. This is wiring. And if you don't understand this, you will keep fighting yourself instead of retraining yourself. Because willpower alone will always fail against a system that is designed to keep you consuming. But awareness changes everything. Awareness creates space. And in that space, you finally get to choose. That is what the 80% rule gives you. A gap between impulse and action. A moment where you can pause instead of react. A moment where you can step out of automatic behavior and into conscious control. At first, it feels uncomfortable. Your mind will resist. It will tell you that you're still hungry. It will push you to finish everything on your plate. It will create excuses, justifications, reasons to keep going. But you need to understand something clearly. That voice is not always telling the truth. It is echoing patterns. It is repeating habits that have been reinforced over time. Real hunger is calm. It is steady. It does not rush you. It does not pressure you. What you often feel is urgency, not hunger, and urgency is a learned response. When you choose to stop at 80%, you are challenging that response. You are telling your brain that the old pattern is no longer in control. And every time you do this, even if it feels small, you are reshaping your mind. This is how change actually happens. Not through one big decision, but through repeated small interruptions of the old pattern. Each pause weakens the habit. Each conscious choice strengthens a new one. Over time, the noise starts to fade. The urgency becomes quieter, the pressure loses its grip, and something new takes its place. Clarity, control, calm. You begin to eat without chaos. You begin to stop without struggle. You begin to feel what it's like to be in charge of your own decisions again. This is not about perfection. It's about progress. It's about understanding that every time you choose awareness over impulse, you are moving forward. You are building a version of yourself that no longer reacts automatically but responds intentionally. And once that shift begins, it doesn't stay limited to food. It spreads into your habits, into your decisions, into the way you handle pressure, stress, and temptation. Because the moment you realize that you can pause, you realize something even more powerful. You are not controlled by your urges. You are not trapped in your patterns. You have the ability to step back, to observe, and to choose differently. And that is where true freedom begins. And when that awareness deepens, you start to notice something even more uncomfortable, but also more honest. The urge to keep eating is not always coming from your body. It's coming from your emotions, because food has become more than fuel. It has become relief, a way to quiet stress, a way to escape boredom, a way to fill the silence when something feels missing inside you. And the moment you begin to slow down, the moment you stop at 80%, that layer is exposed. You feel it, that slight tension, that urge to reach for more, even when your body has had enough. And in that moment, you are faced with a choice that most people avoid. You can either cover that feeling with another bite, or you can face it. This is where real change begins, because overeating is not just a habit of the body, it is a pattern of the mind. A response to discomfort. And as long as that discomfort is hidden under constant consumption, it will continue to control you. The 80% rule forces you to see clearly. It creates a pause where emotion rises to the surface, and that pause can feel uncomfortable. It can feel unfamiliar, but it is also where your power lives. Ask yourself in that moment with complete honesty, am I still hungry, or am I trying to feel something else? That question cuts through illusion. It brings truth into focus. And truth, even when uncomfortable, is what sets you free. You may realize that you're not eating because your body needs more. You're eating because your mind is restless, because your emotions are unsettled, because something deeper is asking for attention, and instead of escaping it, you begin to sit with it. That is not weakness, that is strength. Because most people spend their entire lives running from discomfort. They chase distractions, they chase quick relief. They never allow themselves to feel fully, to understand what is really happening inside them. And because of that, they remain controlled by the very things they avoid. But you are choosing something different. You are choosing awareness over escape. You are choosing to feel instead of numb. And in doing so, you are breaking a cycle that has been running on autopilot for years. At first, it won't be easy. Your mind will search for ways to return to the old pattern. It will tell you that it's harmless, that it's easier, that you deserve it. But you have to see through that. You have to recognize that comfort is not always the same as growth. Growth often feels uncomfortable. It requires you to stay present when your instinct is to run. It requires you to choose discipline when impulse feels stronger. And every time you do, you become stronger. Not just in your ability to control food, but in your ability to control yourself. Your reactions, your decisions, your direction. This is emotional discipline, the ability to experience a feeling without being controlled by it, the ability to pause in the middle of an urge and choose a different response. And once you develop that, everything begins to change. Food loses its grip. It no longer controls your mood. It no longer becomes your escape. It returns to its true role as something that supports you, not something that defines you. And in that shift, you gain something far greater than control over eating. You gain control over your inner world. Because when you stop running from what you feel and start facing it with clarity, you stop being driven by unconscious patterns. You start living with intention. And the more you begin to live with that intention, the more you realize that discipline is not what you once believed it to be. It is not force. It is not pressure. It is not waking up every day in a battle against yourself. Real discipline is quieter than that. It is steady. It is controlled. It is a decision made calmly again and again without drama. Stopping at 80% is not an act of restriction. It is an act of respect. Respect for your body, respect for your limits. Respect for the line between what you need and what you simply desire in the moment. Most people never learn where that line is. They live in extremes. They push until they are overwhelmed, then they pull back with guilt. They go all in, then fall all out. It becomes a cycle of intensity and collapse. And in that cycle, consistency never has a chance to grow. But when you choose balance, everything begins to stabilize. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to push to the edge to feel progress. You simply need to show up with control, to stop when enough is enough, to walk away before excess takes over. That is where real power lives. Because anyone can go all in for a moment. Anyone can rely on bursts of motivation. But very few can maintain control in the small, quiet moments where no one is watching. Very few can choose discipline when there is no pressure forcing them to do so. And that is exactly what you are building. Every time you stop at 80%, you are reinforcing a new identity. You are no longer someone who reacts without thinking. You are someone who chooses with awareness. Someone who understands that control is not about denying yourself, but about guiding yourself. This identity shift is everything. Because once you start to see yourself as a disciplined person, your actions begin to align naturally. You don't need constant motivation. You don't need external pressure. Your behavior becomes a reflection of who you believe you are, and belief is powerful. If you believe you lack control, you will act that way. If you believe you are capable of discipline, you will begin to prove it to yourself through action. Small actions, repeated daily, shaping a stronger version of you. This is why the 80% rule works so deeply. It is simple enough to follow, but powerful enough to transform how you see yourself. It doesn't overwhelm you. It integrates into your life, one meal at a time, one decision at a time. And as it integrates, it begins to influence more than just your eating. You start to recognize excess in other areas. You start to notice when you are pushing too far, giving too much, or losing balance. And instead of waiting until burnout forces you to stop, you begin to choose it earlier. You begin to live with control instead of correction. This is how sustainable growth is built. Not through extremes, but through consistency. Not through force, but through awareness. And as that awareness strengthens, life begins to feel different. Lighter, clearer, more stable. Because discipline, when it is rooted in balance, does not feel like something you are fighting. It feels like something that is guiding you. And as that guidance becomes stronger, you begin to feel the difference not just in your choices, but in your entire state of being. Your body starts to respond. Your energy begins to shift. You are no longer weighed down by excess, no longer trapped in that cycle of heaviness that drains you without you even realizing it. Think about how often you felt slow after eating, not just physically but mentally. That fog, that lack of clarity, that quiet drop in motivation, it's not random. It's the direct result of giving your body more than it needs. When you overload the system, it redirects energy to deal with the excess, and that energy has to come from somewhere. It comes from your focus. It comes from your drive. It comes from your ability to think clearly and act with purpose. So every time you go beyond enough, you are not just affecting your body in that moment. You are affecting your performance, your productivity, your momentum, and over time, that becomes your normal. You start to believe that low energy is just part of life. That mental fog is unavoidable. That feeling heavy is something you just have to accept. But it's not. It's a pattern. And like any pattern, it can be changed. When you stop at 80%, you protect your energy. You allow your body to function the way it was designed to. Light, efficient, focused. You give yourself the ability to move through your day with clarity instead of resistance. And that clarity changes everything. Because when your mind is clear, your decisions improve. When your energy is stable, your actions become stronger. When your body feels light, your confidence rises without effort. This is the hidden advantage most people overlook. They focus on appearance. On numbers, on outcomes that take time to see. But they ignore the immediate shift in how they feel. And how you feel determines how you act. If you feel heavy, you slow down. If you feel drained, you avoid effort. If you feel foggy, you hesitate. But if you feel light, you move. If you feel clear, you decide. If you feel energized, you act. And all of that starts with something as simple as knowing when to stop. The 80% rule teaches patience in a world that pushes urgency. It teaches you to trust that you don't need more to feel satisfied, that you don't need to chase fullness to experience comfort, because real satisfaction is quiet. It doesn't demand excess. It doesn't push you beyond your limits. It settles in naturally when you give it the space to arrive. And once you experience that, once you feel what it's like to walk away from a meal feeling light, in control, and energized, you begin to question everything you used to believe. You begin to see that more is not always better, that pushing further is not always progress, that sometimes the most powerful decision you can make is to stop. And that realization doesn't stay limited to food. It expands into your life. You start to recognize where you are overdoing, overthinking, overextending. And instead of continuing until you break, you begin to step back earlier. You begin to protect your energy, your focus, your time. You begin to live with intention instead of reaction. And in that shift, life becomes lighter. Not because you have less, but because you finally understand what is enough. And once you begin to understand what enough truly feels like, you realize that change was never meant to happen in one perfect moment. It was always meant to be built in small, quiet decisions that most people overlook. You don't transform your life in a single meal. You transform it in the space between bites. In that pause where you choose awareness instead of impulse. In that moment where you could keep going, but you decide not to. That is where your future is being shaped. At first, it won't feel natural. You will forget. You will get distracted. You will fall back into old patterns without even noticing. And for a moment, you might feel frustrated. You might think you're not making progress, but that's not true, because every time you become aware, even after the fact, you are still moving forward. Awareness is the first step to control. And control is built through repetition, not perfection. So instead of chasing flawless execution, focus on returning to the decision, returning to the pause. Returning to that simple rule that brings you back to yourself. Stop at enough, that's it. Not when the plate is empty, not when you feel heavy, not when it's too late. Stop when your body has had what it needs, and then trust it. Trust that the feeling of satisfaction will rise. Trust that you are not missing out. Trust that you are building something stronger than temporary comfort. Because every time you do this, you are reinforcing a new pattern. You are teaching your mind that it is safe to stop. That it doesn't need to chase more. That it can exist in a state of balance. And slowly that pattern becomes part of who you are. You no longer have to fight yourself. You no longer have to rely on bursts of motivation. Your actions begin to align naturally with your intention. This is how real habits are formed, not through force but through consistency. Not through extremes but through calm, repeated choices that shape your identity over time. And as that identity strengthens, you start to notice something powerful. You trust yourself. You trust your decisions, you trust your limits, you trust your ability to choose what is right even when it's not easy. That trust changes everything. Because once you trust yourself in one area, it begins to spread. Into your work, into your goals, into every situation where impulse once had control. You stop reacting automatically. You start responding with intention. And that is where real freedom lives. Not in doing whatever you want in the moment, but in knowing that you are not controlled by every urge that appears. In knowing that you have the ability to pause, to choose, to act with purpose. This is more than a habit. It is a way of living, a way of moving through life with clarity instead of chaos. With control instead of excess, with awareness instead of distraction. And it all begins with one simple decision repeated daily. To stop at 80%. Not because you have to, but because you understand. Enough is enough, and when you truly begin to live by that understanding, something deeper awakens inside you. You stop chasing control and you start embodying it. It becomes part of how you think, how you act, how you move through every moment of your life. Because this was never just about food. It was never just about stopping at 80%. It was about breaking a pattern that quietly controlled you for years. A pattern of always needing more comfort, more distraction, more stimulation, and never feeling like it was enough. But now you see it clearly. You see how that need for more has been draining your energy, your focus, your peace. You see how it has been keeping you stuck in cycles that feel familiar but never fulfilling. And for the first time, you are no longer blind to it. That awareness is power. Because once you see the pattern, you are no longer inside it. You are observing it. And the moment you can observe something, you can change it. This is where real transformation locks in. Not when things are easy, not when motivation is high, but in the quiet, ordinary moments where no one is watching, where the choice is yours and yours alone. Where you either return to the old habit or step into the new one you are building. And every time you choose to stop it enough, you are proving something to yourself. You are proving that you don't need to follow every urge. You are proving that you are not a slave to habit. You are proving that discipline is not something outside of you, it is something within you. And that realization builds confidence on a level that nothing external ever can, because it is earned. It is built through action, through consistency, through moments where you could have taken the easy path but chose the stronger one instead. And that strength begins to shape your entire life. You start to approach challenges differently. You stop avoiding discomfort. You stop running from effort. You start leaning into it knowing that growth lives there. You become someone who can pause under pressure, someone who can think clearly when others react emotionally, someone who is guided by intention, not impulse. That is a different level of control. And with that control comes freedom. Freedom from constant cravings, freedom from emotional reactions, freedom from patterns that once felt impossible to break. You are no longer chasing satisfaction. You are creating it, because satisfaction was never about having more. It was about recognizing when you already have enough. And when you live with that mindset, everything changes. You stop overcomplicating things. You stop searching for extreme solutions. You realize that the answer was always simple, but it required awareness to see it, to pause, to listen, to stop at the right time. This is how you take back control of your body. This is how you sharpen your mind. This is how you build a life that feels balanced, strong, and intentional. And it all comes down to a choice that seems small but carries immense power. The choice to stop before excess. The choice to trust your body. The choice to live with awareness. Because in the end, real strength is not shown in how much you can consume. It is shown in how confidently you can stop.